Welcome to Average Joe's Gym's Home Projects, where we do projects and maintenance at home that even an average Joe can accomplish. In today's episode, I'm going to go over the first part of our bathroom remodel for our kids' bathroom. This project was no average Joe project, and I learned a lot from some of the mistakes I made in this one. Today we're going to go over some of the demo work and then some of the plumbing work that went into this project. Let's do it. If this footage seems familiar here, it's because you've seen it on a previous episode. I had to remove the mirror, so I'm just going to recap really quick. Check out that episode for the method on how we removed this mirror. There's not much to demo work. You're just going to do a lot of hard work chipping tiles out if you have a countertop like this one. Make sure you wear eye protection. Some of those little shards coming off the tiles can go right in your eye and permanently blind you. The tiles that had been floated on the wall were the toughest ones to get off. You pretty much had to rip out the drywall that was behind the tile to get it off. It wasn't a big deal though, because I'm going to end up drywalling over it anyway, and then in the end covering it in shiplap. I spared you guys the trouble of having to watch us destroy that entire cabinet and countertop. It wasn't that big of a deal. You have to get underneath and disconnect the plumbing also, just so that you can get the cabinet off the wall once you get everything undone. So I'm converting a single sink vanity to a double sink. I have 3 kids and they just end up fighting over the one sink every night to brush their teeth. I tackled this project when I did because we were having new floors put in. That toilet doesn't actually belong there. It's just there because it had to be removed to pull the old flooring out. I thought about tackling the flooring project for the channel, but I've never done it before, and it was just going to take too long to get it all done and have everyone living in a construction zone. Okay, so here's the single drain right here, and then you're going to have the hot water and the cold water valves that come down out of the attic right there. My wife picked out a pre-made vanity with sinks already installed. It's pretty impressive what they have nowadays. You don't have to build anything. The cabinet pretty much comes all put together with just the mounting and the plumbing that needs to be done. I did a lot of measuring because you're going to go off the wall with the measurements and you want to line up the plumbing so it gets into the back of those holes there for the sinks. This vanity came from Costco. And my wife also picked a matching one to go in our half bath that I also did some work on and replaced. I'm going to be honest with you guys, this project was really difficult and hard. You're on a time schedule, especially because I had guys waiting to put floors in. Luckily they were doing some demo in the other room, which gave me time to really tear this bathroom up and get the project done before they needed to do the installation. Another thing you need to remember is if you're going to cut into any kind of piping, like the hot and cold water valves like you see there, then you're not going to have any water for the toilets or anything else in the house until you can get them fixed up. I've got a funny story about that I'll get to a little later when I get to that part of the project. Cutting the drain pipes pretty simple. You just get the Sawzall in there. You are working in a really tight space, so make sure that you pay attention to that back wall. But you just cut the bottom and then flip her over and cut the top. Once it's cut, I can pull that single drain out of there and then figure out how to get my T that I picked up at the local Lowe's to fit in there and make it 2 drains. It's not as easy as you'd think. You have to get that pipe the right height, and then that T actually was a little bit wide for where the pipe comes out of the ground. I was going to have to cut a hole in that stud right there just to get the stupid thing in there. The real question is where to drill that stupid hole, because if you put it too low, the pipe won't fit. Here's real concern right here. I'm not exactly sure. I'm just going to hold it up there and see if I can't figure it out and get the pipe through that hole correctly. This is not the most scientific thing I've ever done, but I had gotten to the point on this one where I was starting to get frustrated. And sometimes when I get frustrated, it's better for me to just put everything down and take a break. In this case, I was just feeling rushed, so I wanted to get things done in a certain amount of time, and I just didn't want to walk away from it. So I took a chance, drilled that hole, and then I did have to do a little bit of cleanup afterwards to get that T in there correctly. It never fails too. You get partway through a hole with your hole saw and your stupid battery dies on your cordless drill. Luckily I still had the Sawzall there and just pulled that one off and finished the job. I'm not going to get into how to glue PVC in this video, but I will say this. You're going to want to use a lot of glue. And I say that because you want to make sure that there are no leaks inside that wall cavity once you put drywall over it. I had to stick a conversion plug in there because the top pipe that goes through the vent is just smaller than the bottom pipe that goes to the drain. Wasn't a big deal, I just glued it in there and then cut a piece of PVC to make it fit. I used a full slip in order to get it in there. You can get those at your local hardware store, and they basically are really nice because they slip over the entire pipe and then you just use a bunch of glue and slide it over the bottom pipe. It's very forgiving and worked out really nicely for me. Again, I used a bunch of glue because I didn't want any leaks in the wall, but also the glue worked pretty nicely to give it a little bit of lubrication as it slid over the pipe. There it is, nice and secure, and I can move on to doing the horizontal pipes for the drains. Measurements are extremely important in this part of the project. If you end up putting the drain pipe through that other stud, and it is actually lower than where the T is right there, then water's got to try to run uphill and down that drain. So you need to make sure you get that measurement correct. You want that sucker to be as level as possible going through that other stud. Once I'd picked my spot, I used the hole saw to put the second hole through that other stud. Quick tip, that hole saw tip gets pretty hot. Alright, so that part of the mission's accomplished, and I got my pipe through the void space, through the other stud, and into the space where the back of the vanity has a hole. Based on my previous measurements, I had a short piece of PVC that I placed in there so that I could put this elbow on the end and get it all set up. I'm trying to get that elbow as level as possible so that it's coming out of the wall at 90 degrees so I can hook up that sink drain. I did a lot of measuring for this project. I wanted to make sure that I got the drain in the right spot so it would fit through the back of the vanity and I could hook up the sink to it. This second sink was a much shorter run and I didn't have to go through any studs. It was in the same void space as the Y, but I still needed a little short piece of PVC there to get it in the right spot. Not to sound like a broken record, but I did use a lot of glue on this elbow also. I just wanted to make sure the drain was good and sealed and nice and secure. So I'm pretty embarrassed to admit now, but after I got this second elbow on, I started to get a little cocky. I felt like, man, I got this whole drain done, and it went pretty smoothly, so I should just be able to tackle the water valves no problem. Boy, was I wrong. This is a copper pipe cutter. As usual, links are in the description. So I did remember to drain all the pipes. I turned off the water main that came to the house, And then I drained everything out of the valves, and out the wall there was a spigot on the side of the house that I opened up and drained all the water out of the attic. It took several hours, but I was able to get it. I figured this is probably the only thing I did right on this part of the project. As I mentioned earlier, when you shut the water off to the house, you can't flush any toilets. Which, when you live in a house with 5 people, it can be somewhat of a disaster. We have several toilets, but once they're used, you couldn't flush them. Once I cut that pipe, I was in a serious hurry to get this conversion piece on the end so that I could use PEX to finish the job. Unfortunately, you have to sweat copper pipe, something I learned that I am not any good at. I'm not even going to explain to you guys how it's done, because I failed at it time after time after time. You have to get that pipe super hot. Super hot, which there's risk because you're dealing with a void space in your wall. I kept thinking I'm gonna start a fire in my house and it's gonna be all my fault because I'm too cheap to call a plumber. Another problem is it seems like there's a doggone spring in my attic. No matter how long I drain that stupid pipe, there's still water running down. I even almost damaged my pipe right here. You can see as it starts to discolor because I'm shooting that flame right at the pipe, which is then melting my PVC. It was after this attempt that I decided to call a plumber. It's a good thing too, because at this point, all 3 of my toilets were full and needed to be flushed. I'm a little embarrassed to use this footage right here, but it's all I had. These little fittings that the plumber put on there, he used a special tool that was evidently extremely expensive in order to get them on there and convert to the PEX. AquaPEX is great stuff. It's extremely forgiving because it's so flexible. There's a couple different styles out there. I chose the one that has the fittings that go inside the PEX and then has the bands that you use this tool to create tension and clamp the PEX onto the fittings. The cutter is extremely sharp. Be careful. I cut myself with it once just reaching in my tool bag to get it out. But it all goes in there, and then you use this device, which will tighten the clamp on there and create a watertight seal. Once I got the PEX lines run for hot and cold for both sinks, I was able to put the PEX valves on the ends that will hook to the water lines for the sinks. And then I could turn the water back on, and the toilets and sinks and dishwasher could all run again. So that's it for this episode of the bathroom remodel. I'll be working on the next portion of this remodel of our kids' bathroom and get the next episode out as soon as I can. As you can see, there's the valves and the drain for both sinks. If you enjoyed this project, please check out our other projects at Average Joe's Gym's Home Projects. And please like and subscribe for future projects.